So you want to get better at backpack battles. After over 60 hours of playtime, I've gathered enough data to give you the 7 best tips to improve your gameplay and increase your rank. Number 1. Use sails. This is especially important during the early game, but also of some significance during the later stages. In the very beginning, you have a limited amount of gold and bag space. So to make use of this limited resources in the most efficient way possible is to make use of the obvious, using sails. It is more likely than not that you will not hit your core items at the very early stages or in the very first few shops. So to bridge the gap between the first stage until you hit your core items, you want to use items that give you no disadvantage during the later stages. And for that you want to use sale items, any. It doesn't matter if they belong into your combination or not. It would be better if they do, but even if they don't. As soon as you hit your core items, you can sell those sale items for no economic disadvantage, and you will still be strong during the early rounds. So effectively you will have a higher net worth of items in your bags than your opponent. Furthermore, anytime you have a little bit of free bag space, even if it's just one little 1x1 space, and you see an item on sale that doesn't fit your combination, for example healing herbs for 2 gold, buy them for the next few rounds till you need that backspace, because an empty backspace with no combat stats is way worth and not worth it than something that doesn't really belong into your build, your combination. Basically you will make use of your gold as combat stats, and as soon as you need that backspace or as soon as you need that gold, you can just sell the sale item for the exact amount you bought it for. Effectively you will have a higher net worth of items in your bag than your opponent. Tip number 2. Balance backspace and items. It's all about efficiency. Empty backspace has no combat stats, while items in storage also have no combat stats. So you have to ask yourself, how much space do you need at what time in your build that you want to achieve, and if you really need a third empty bag, or if you are strong enough to win despite having a third empty bag. This of course depends on what build you try to achieve. There are reasons why you want to have a lot of empty bags, but that depends on tip number 4. Tip number 3. The right item distribution. One of the most simple mechanics about efficiency in this game is item placement. The right placement can make the difference to triggering your core item one more time and clutching the win or losing. Furthermore, at the same gold value, the one with the more efficient placement will more likely win. This is especially apparent in food builds, as food triggers 10% faster for each food around it, discounting itself. So you want to prioritize which food gives you the most benefits. For example, if you have Excalibur, you want as much stars of Excalibur filled, but at the same time think about the placement of your food, since the food itself will surround each other as well and trigger faster. So try to prioritize which food is more important. For example, you want a lot of stamina and healing, so you want to prioritize bananas, and then rearrange your food so your bananas get triggered faster, after Excalibur of course. So take the time between each round and see if you can rearrange the placement of your items a little bit more efficient than last round. Short term it might not be worth the time, but in the long run you will win way more rounds than if you don't do this. Tip number 4. Timing. Rerolling and not rerolling at the right time will give you more likely what you need and a better and more stable economy. Knowing when to reroll is way more important than the first look suggests. Take for example whetstones. If you are going for a build that needs a lot of whetstones, for example the heroic blade or the burning blade builds, you will want to reroll as early and as often as possible, as whetstones as a common item appear way more often in the early shop than in the later stages. So even if you only have 1 or 2 gold left, not enough to buy a whetstone, you want to reroll this gold to have a chance to get a whetstone and lock it in the shop. Because in the later rounds, or even 1 round later, the chance of getting a whetstone might go down. The same is true for the opposite. If you are not in need for any whetstones or any common items for your build, then rerolling is kind of useless. Instead, make use of sales, take the combat stats and save your economy. Tip number 5. Know what your class wants to do. Know the mechanics and the strong points of your class. As a berserker, it makes less sense to have a lot of armor at the very beginning of the round, as your strong point will be the power peak you will get in berserker rage. So by delaying when you get to your power peak, you will more likely lose. Adapt your item builds and your items to the class and the mechanics behind the class that you are playing. It's less about covering your weakness, but leaning into your strength. Tip number 6. Support item systems. After knowing why your build is strong and when it is strong, see how you can support it. There are multiple different support systems during the game. For example, the foods, the mana, the dark type items, or different unique single items like the trumpet or the flute. Some support items or some support systems are way better paired with some builds than others. Take for example the double X berserk build. It is usually played with gems, even though foods can do most of the supporting work that gems do. But the food support system takes a lot of space, whereas the gems take very little space and they work great with the anvil as they count as crafted items and will give flames every round. Or take the Venomancer, which works really well with food if you get Pandemonium, or with dark items if you go with the Dark Scythe build. So look up what is most effective and what is available. And don't try to force one build if you don't get it. A suboptimal support build is still better than having none. Tip number 7. Know of current metacoms. Know what they are, why they are strong and what their strong points are, and how to support them, how they work, how their mechanics are. This is especially important to counter them if you are playing something else, or if you are playing them and a patch hits or anything changes, you can adapt to the new situation and still make your combination work while keeping what made this meta strong intact. As a little bonus tip, use piggy banks as much as you can. If they are on sale, they are worth it after only 1 round in your backpack. While they are not on sale, they are already worth it after 2 rounds. So, it's an excellent idea if your early game is strong or you are strong in general and you want to boost your economy in the mid to late game. Those were my 7 best tips that I could think of. If you have any more tips, write them down in the comments and I might include them in the next video. Furthermore, if you liked it, consider liking the video or commenting, and I will see you next time.